A brilliant man named Maslow laid out a hierarchy of needs. They lay out from a human perspective what are the things that we as human covet and will fight for the most, from the most basic in terms of shelter, security, up through love, reinforcement. But the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is obviously rookie drafts. That's all I have to say about that. Anyways, we are underway with our 2025 rookie draft. You've got the Vikings on with Eagles, Colts, and Panthers. We've got a couple invites out, so we may have folks come and go as we get through this thing. But that's kind of how we do this. Just kind of have the running pod for as long as we go. We'll go timeline style, do a couple of trades that led up to the draft, and then try and intermix the picks and analysis with the trades that preceded them and followed them and get us to where we are live. We're starting this with the Cowboys currently on the clock with the 26th pick, but we are going to work our way to them. So if the pick comes in, we'll keep going where we are and then get to them as we get to them. But anyways, we'll start with, as I mentioned, the lead up to the draft. So last week, we lamented that, you know what sucks? The fact that everyone's waiting for the draft to make trades. That everyone was waiting to see where people landed and they wanted to see the draft pick. And that's when people were going to start moving these things and not really before. Or maybe we just needed a catalyst. We needed that trade that was going to serve as the starting gun to everybody that it's time to get up and get going. And that happened on Tuesday night at 9:27 when finally the Cardinals jumped on the grenade that was Travis Etienne and gave up Audric Estime and the Bengals' 26th first-round pick for him. At the time, I looked at it and said, that doesn't exactly feel like the starting gun trade, but who knows? I could be wrong. I think that I was. Or maybe it was the post-pod trade that happened shortly after that between Eagles and I. But nonetheless, what followed were 22 trades since that catalyst and a bunch of picks that have happened at the start of the draft. So just to kind of quickly go through my fire sale before things really got going, I went from, I think, having about 24 picks to, I think, about 8, giving up, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them to Eagles, 2 seconds and 4 thirds to move up to 131. Again, I had too many picks. That's 24 contract years. I wasn't going to be able to roster all those things without doing a ridiculous amount of roster management, but we were going to make that work. And then shortly after, things picked up with the Texans, who had Justin Fields and Jahmyr Gibbs on their trade bait and said, let's get crazy. So I sent them an offer involving Kyler Murray, and we settled on Fields and his first-round pick next year for Kyler Murray, Braylon Trice, and Damone Clark. So again, I'm finally starting to consolidate and get rid of some contract years. Good news for me. Moving on, Fields going to another Buckeye fan. The Patriots, along with 130, 309, and 313 for the 107. So, some more consolidation. Pats get their quarterback before their draft, and, I get a higher draft pick. Yay me. Saints, after, I'd say a brief entertainment period of moving 102. Moves 102 and 332 for Braylon Allen, Marshawn Lloyd. The 131 I just acquired from Eagles, 208, 209, 210, and 307. So Saints gets 1, 2, 3, 4 picks in the top 42, plus the 307, Braylon Allen and Marshawn Lloyd for the 102 and 332. So I think since he bought the 102 from me, that's pretty good value he's getting back for that in terms of a bunch of nickels, but he's probably got about 6 nickels there for an opportunity to make up the quarter. Bills finally lives up to the meme, trading Max Crosby for the 125 and the 303. So the Raiders pick up Max Crosby, as they should. Cowboys follow suit, moving Devontae Adams for Ray Davis in a second. Minuscule trade of me giving up the 404 for the 504 and a future fourth. And let's see, we're still pre-draft. Colts giving up DeMarvin Overshown for 403, 408, 433, and 434 for a future 2 future seconds. Colts, since you're on, I'm kind of rapid firing the pre-draft stuff here, but anything you want to add to that? Oh, I think he fell off the stage.
Thank you. I'm back. I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So sorry about that. I didn't realize you fell off the stage.
You're good. I was on my phone and I switched to my computer. I shopped DeMarvin Overshown for a while a couple weeks ago when I had him, and eventually settled on, I think, a late first with you, Mike. What was that? Commanders first? And then got him back for what's his name? For Javon Baker and a second, the Panthers second. So I figured I, at the minimum, wanted to get my money back, but I was trying to make a little bit of a profit. I don't think many people saw Javon Baker as a second-round pick at this point, so getting 2 seconds back is pretty favorable, I think, on my end. I like Javon Baker, but the Patriots draft another wide receiver. It seems like he's probably not going to be the number 2. So, yeah, I just wanted to profit. I got a couple picks next year. That's all I really wanted.
Yeah, I like Overshown. He's recovering from a serious injury, so reasonable to not necessarily get the full first in value. And Baker's an acquired taste. He has the skills. He's either going to step up this year and show it, or he's going to get buried, and his time is running out. But he still has the opportunity to pop. Anyways, now we start getting serious again. So one of the great things about this league is even though we represent franchises, in 90% of the cases, those don't actually represent our real team. So the Buccaneers, apparently, is a huge Titans fan. So as soon as it became apparent, like a couple days ago, that Cam Ward was going to be the first pick, and as soon as I acquired the second pick, Buccaneers was interested in moving up for the pick that was going to allow him to draft Cam Ward, which makes a lot of sense. We have these teams for the long haul. It's very rare that your team is in a position to take the first overall pick, and you have the opportunity to have that be a cornerstone of your franchise. Buccaneers has already won 2 titles and is playing with house money, so why not go get your guy? So he did. He gives up Kyle Allen, Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, David Bell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chuck Clark, and 436 for Luke McCaffrey, Jaden Hicks, the 102, the 114, and the 332. So basically, taking the 102 and 332 I just got from Saints, adding the 114 Luke, Jaden Hicks to it, and getting Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Chuck Clark is, again, a nice depth safety to have on the cheap, but those are the main pieces back to it. So as soon as I acquire all these picks, I start trading them again, as is my way. And that gets us, I think, to the start of the draft. Am I right?
Yep,
All right.
you are correct.
Okay. So I'm going to try and, like I said, go alternating between picks and trades as it makes sense. So with the first overall pick in the draft, to nobody's surprise, and to what I had basically said for the weeks leading into the draft as soon as I acquired it, I'm taking Ashton Genty, who went to the Raiders and I thought was a great landing spot for him. He's now the workhorse for Pete Carroll, who, he's going to just is a great spot for him to be in. I've already got his spell back in Dylan Lowby. And if I need to go get McCormick or someone like that as additional depth, I can probably do that on the relative cheap. But he's going to eat. He's going to step into a lot of areas, and I love the talent. So that was my 101. Who wants to call me an idiot for taking Genty first overall?
I mean, I'll call you an idiot, but I don't think you are.
That's fine.
I think
appreciate it.
There's no other, unless you have to have a quarterback, there's no other player that should go one. I hate picking running backs on the Raiders, but I mean, he's far and away the best skill position player in the draft. What do you do?
Yeah, I don't think that's debatable. I mean, some people say that the gap has lessened between 1 and 2, but still consensus 1 without a doubt. So,
I mean,
fantastic pick.
If the Chargers didn't sign Najee Harris and their running back room was like Amari and Hampton and the dust coming off of the feet of Gus Edwards or something, whatever. All right. I can get the argument that Amari and Hampton's right because he would literally see every touch in that back.
I mean, I was more referencing like super flex.
Oh, like quarterback or
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Just because we quickly realized that there was only one like starting caliber quarterback in the draft, and that scarcity kind of changes the value a little bit.
For sure.
But either way, Genty is the 101 and should have been in 99% of leagues.
Yes. Like I was saying earlier, I can't remember who I was talking with. If Genty went to like the Eagles, it's like then there's an argument. It's like, okay, maybe there's someone else we should consider here. But he went to the Raiders. He's the only guy in that backfield. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Panthers.
Yeah, it's just if we're going to talk about all these trades, you circle back to it. Those the 10 and the 13 and something to get him. Mm-hmm. Like I don't blame you for buying him this, that, and the other. It's just it still feels hard to me, especially just seeing who was available at 10 and 13.
Yeah, I mean, it always is when you look at it strictly like that. But if you think your team is one piece away, you got a bunch of depth, but you don't have like one guy that's going to go out and get you like 25 a week. Sometimes I can get just going, all right, I'm going to pass on, Luther Burden and I don't even know, Colston Loveland, and I'm going to just take Genty.
In a traditional league, yeah, but this league is just unlike any other. And, you have to suck and not make the playoffs to get the 10th or 13th pick. And to move 2 of those picks in a 32-man league, it just feels heavy, especially for an RB. But I get it.
Yeah. And look, those picks ended up being Emeka Egbuka and Quinton on Judkins, who pre-draft, if you said you're moving Judkins, Egbuka, and future first for Genty, I would have winced a little bit. I'll be honest. But I probably still would have done it. Because I just believe that, he's that level of player. But, yeah, especially with the situation that Egbuka lands himself into to start. But, again, with a talent like his, it's probably not going to be there for long. But nonetheless, we'll get to them a little bit more as we go.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, we said this earlier while we were watching the draft. This was a terrible draft for fantasy. There was a lot of guys that we expected to be pretty close to immediate contributors that just did not go anywhere. That's going to have them contributing quickly. Luther Burden is a perfect example. Everyone loved him, like second, third receiver in the draft. He goes to Chicago, and now he's probably wide receiver 3 in that offense that struggled last year. I mean,
Well, is he even option 3 though? Like, there's even an argument, and they took Loveland at 10, and they have Cole
he might
Kmet,
be
and they
option
have
4,
everyone
exactly.
else. Yeah, he might be.
Even further.
He might be a low volume guy until something happens.
And then you got Agbeka that Mike was just saying. He went to Tampa Bay. He's at best a wide receiver 3. If Jalen McMillan takes a step forward and Godwin's healthy, he might be wide receiver 4. Quinshon Judkins. Yeah, they got Jerome Ford there. Nick Chubb's still there, I think. But
They double dipped. They took 2 RBs.
Oh, did they? They took a second one later.
Yep, they took 2 RBs and 2 quarterbacks.
But at the end of the day,
I think the 5th or something. Or was it the 3rd or the 5th?
What for the running back?
Yeah.
I think it was the 5th.
Dylan Simpson in the 4th.
Yeah, they spent like 2 top 110 picks on running backs. The one being the 35th, 36th for Judkins.
Yeah. I mean, I could get it. Like if 13 was like Matthew Golden, first round wide receiver, or I mean, I don't know. You could say Trey Harris is the wide receiver 2 in LA. Maybe. I could maybe get behind that as a good best ball option, but looking at the guys here that were going after 10, I think I'd take Ashton Genty over almost any combination of the two. It's just a lot of these players I like, but the situation, even like Tyler Warren, you are absolutely banking on Indianapolis having Arch Manning next year because AR-15 is not an NFL quarterback. So that's my opinion.
Well, again, we will we'll see what happens. So we go to 102, which was pre-drafted. Buccaneers take Cam Ward.
Huge shot.
RJ. Well, so we'll talk about Cam Ward there for a second. So in Superflex leagues or a league like ours, I think far and away, I think we're at a point where we're debating for sure. In non-Superflex or non-deeper quarterback leagues, 102 is really a Maureen Hampton kind of slam dunk, lands in a Greg Roman offense that's going to love all of the things that Hampton can do. That said, Cam Ward is the one quarterback that you are feeling good is going to walk away from this draft at a starting position in week 1. Again, I like the latest part for Dart. We'll get to that in a little bit. But like if you needed a quarterback, this is the guy you have to go get. And Buccaneers moved up for him, so kind of a slam dunk move and the right place to make this pick.
He paid a lot for him. This was definitely a fan chasing because, one of the biggest values you get out of drafting a quarterback this high is the cap savings. And Jared Goff was $14 million a year. So they went from $14 million to $7 million a year, gave up Amon-Ra, and got back like the 14th and some scattershot picks late. That was a big pay up for a team that didn't necessarily need a quarterback.
Well, the good news is nobody wants to win the South. So,
yeah. No, but I mean, to Mike's point earlier, he's playing with house money, and at this point, he's got 2 wins under his belt. I mean, it's great to keep winning, but sometimes it's like, my team just drafted this quarterback. I want to root for him for the next 10 or 12 years, and I want him on my fantasy team. And that's just all there is to it. Yes, was it an overpay to get him? Yes. I mean, you essentially gave up Amon-Ra for the 114 and some other stuff because the 102 and Goff were essentially exchanged. So, yeah, it was an overpay, but I like it. Good for him. He gets to root for a player on his team and root for him in fantasy.
As for the trade, I view it as the 102 for Amon-Ra, and the picks are for the quarterback that he no longer needed because he was going to take one at 102.
Well, I'm thinking like 102 is the quarterback he drafted, so it's like quarterback for quarterback. Yes, Goff is not directly worth the 102,
Right.
but I don't know. I think Goff is worth the top 10 pick on his own. He's super cheap. He's still on the younger side. He's extended. He's in the absolute perfect offense, and he puts up top 6 fantasy numbers. I mean, you can't really hope for better than that out of anybody.
No. He's
Yeah,
nice.
he got a
I'm
couple
very
things to
happy.
like too. He liked McCaffrey. He liked Hicks a good amount. We exchanged about, I want to say, 8 offers involving Hicks, so he was able to kill a lot of birds with one stone.
No, I mean, I'm not hating on it. It's an overpay, but it's like, who cares? He's having fun. Let him have fun.
Okay, it's a benefit of being a 25-man league.
Yep.
All right, so let's put the Eagles in that unenviable position where Genty's gone, Cam Ward is gone. I won't say it's the next tier, but you start to find yourself in a position of, do I take Omarion in the nuts landing spot? Do I take Travis Hunter and his 2-way of points in a situation where he's about as freed up to do whatever the hell he wants to do in Jacksonville as he could be? Do you take Ted McMillan in a position where he can absolutely step into the alpha role on day one? Or do you trade down, out, or something else?
Do you trade for a $26 million, 26-year-old wide receiver that's top of the league? God damn it. Yeah, so RJ and I had some talks, and I want to say I was probably a nose hair away from taking it, but I actually offered CD for my obvious need at running back for this pick, which he ultimately declined after a while. But
Yeah.
Anything to add, RJ?
I thought the landing spot was a home run. I'm not worried about Najee.
no, Najee's a one and done.
This was such a good landing spot that it actually moved Hampton up in my personal rankings. If Cleveland doesn't trade out of the second pick and they take Hunter, I'm probably taking Hunter with that pick. Or if the Chargers take Golden in the first instead of Hampton, then I take Golden with the third pick in the draft. So, yeah, I had to, when I realized I was on the clock, I had to take a couple minutes to actually think about it because my original rankings had changed so drastically.
I'm glad to hear that my favorite team is such a fantasy hotspot.
Yeah, they just need a lot on offense.
Well, the other
Yeah.
fact of the matter, I hadn't realized this. Between the running backs in LA for the Chargers, I think there were 560 carries by running backs last year. And everyone's gone. So Najee's obviously stepping in, but he's not taking 560 carries by himself.
No.
So even if Najee picks up the 200 carries or 220 carries or whatever you want to give him, there's still 340 carries to go around between Hampton and the rest of that backfield. So there's more than enough opportunity for multiple running backs to eat there. And especially if you really, I think a lot of this field, Najee is going to be one and done at best. Then, yeah, it's perfect. You ride him. You get the benefit of him in the best ball league for this year to probably finish as still an RB1, or at least he's going to be projected as such to do. And then when Najee goes the way of the dodo bird, he's going to be in a Harbaugh and Greg Roman offense ready to eat. So I love it. And like I said, I've called RJ a son of a bitch at least 3 or 4 times because I thought I had played this perfectly, that he was going to take one of these receivers. Now I was going to end up with Genty and Omarion with the Bears backfield, and I was going to be swimming in running backs, not knowing what to do with myself.
Yeah, I watched that Chargers press conference after the first round. Jim Harbaugh looks so fried in that. Like, if he would have broke out a My Little Pony spiral notebook and showed off plays, they would have been only running plays. Like, I don't even think that guy knows that wide receivers play in the NFL anymore.
I love it.
Only if they're forced upon him.
He's
Only
in
if they
his
can
own-
block.
Yeah, he's in his own little world there.
No, I mean, I think it's great. I expect Hampton and Najee to both be in the range of like 230 carries and then, 100 carries to the rest of the backfield. I do expect Hampton to also get the lion's share of the passing work. So, carries aside, he's probably going to get another 40 or 50 catches to go along with that. Which,
So, one of the things we will probably say quite a bit on this podcast is a lot of these running backs have like decent game in the passing. So, and he like Genty will be a weapon in the passing game to some extent.
I think he had 30 receptions last year.
Yeah.
another news, RJ, what do you want for him?
That's another phrase that we get used.
Break out the
a lot.
checkbook.
Break out the checkbook.
Yeah, I won't say I'm not going to say I won't listen to offers, but
I'll give you the Commanders first and the Falcons first.
no.
Yeah.
That's a deal,
Good
man.
luck.
That's a
Trust
good
me.
starting point.
Yep. Hey, Commanders, help me out here. You're going to finish in the bottom 8, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna start my fire sale tonight.
Oh, perfect. Good to hear.
Glad everyone's playing ball for this one. All right. So that being said, that triggered my next two pre-drafts. So I had pre-drafted basically for the third, fourth, and fifth, basically the fourth and fifth pick. In some order, Hampton, Hunter, and Tet McMillan. Expecting, again, RJ was going to take one of the receivers and I get the other two, but I'm very happy with the way this worked out. And I told him kind of pre-pod too that as much as I would have enjoyed the embarrassment of Richards at running back that would have come with having Genty, Hampton, and the Bears backfield, this is probably the best way this could have worked out for me. I am in love with Travis Hunter, and the more I look at him, the more I watch him, the more I see Devonta Smith. And what does Devonta Smith have that's helping him thrive in Philadelphia? He has a YOLO quarterback, and he has a true alpha receiver that can take a lot of the coverage attention away from him. And he's got that in Brian Thomas Jr. So I think it is the perfect spot for him to be wide receiver too. They're going to work him in on defense in the right packages. And he's got Cohen as his head coach / offensive coordinator. And he loves to consolidate targets to his top guys. So he's got the alpha. He's got the consolidated targets. He's going to play both sides of the ball. And it's Duval, which I feel like his personality is going to be just a great fit in. So I love everything about Travis Hunter, and I'm happy to have him on my team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a no-brainer with Travis Hunter here. I think I was more surprised with the Tet pick up next. I figured he would have taken another one of the top running backs over Tet just because of obviously the QB questions in Carolina.
Yeah, but who is there
yeah.
left to take at running back?
At that point, Henderson. You also had Cleveland with Judkins. I think those were both viable picks there.
It's important to look at the clock on this one. I made these picks. Again, they were pre-drafted. But
You made them expecting to have Hampton.
So I was expecting Hampton, but also this was at 1:20 in the afternoon. So day two hadn't started yet. So Henderson didn't have a landing spot. Judkins didn't have a landing spot. None of these guys had landing spots yet because we had only made it to the first round. So I knew, again, to RJ's point, I knew I liked Tet's landing spot and Hunter's landing spot. I liked but didn't love Golden's landing spot. And again, I think Hampton got the nuts landing spot for a non-Genty running back. So I again, went with the. I think Jet has a role in that Carolina offense, but there's no alpha there yet. There's Thielen, who's getting damn old, and a couple other folks who have tried to fill that role, but Tet can kind of step in day one and take that job if he wants it. Question is, will he? But I think he's the best pure receiver in this draft. I had a man crush on Luther Burden since last year. That I wanted to take Luther Burden as one of the receivers in last year's class. I'm on the record in saying so, but because I didn't know where he was going to land, and I like Carolina for Tet McMillan, the way he plays the game and the offense they run. I think that was the tiebreaker for me. So, knowing landing spot and being happy with landing spot, that's what broke ties in that favor. Henderson was a thought for sure, but I was worried about all sorts of positive and negative outcomes. I feel like New England's a neutral outcome, but there are plenty of outcomes where I would have just been like, ugh, that's not a great spot.
Well, I have a little bit of a problem with landing in New England. It feels like he has a very similar play style to Ramondre Stevenson, and Stevenson just got a 4-year extension. He's there until 2028, unless they cut him after the 26th season. So at the absolute best case, Henderson doesn't really start or take over the alpha role until the end of next year. So maybe New England goes crazy and they do what Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are doing. They just give running backs the ball 560 times a game. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I get Judkins. I mean, Cleveland's a pretty good landing spot. But, I mean, you got to think about draft capital too. You have running backs who routinely get given up on, even, early day 2 picks. But Tet McMillan was a top 10 pick. He is going to get every single opportunity to be the guy in Carolina for the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, I can't get away from the top 10 pick. I would just go Tet here every time.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say about Tet, unbelievable. I think he can't, at times, he's number 1 receiver in this entire class. Last year, he pulled a Derek Stingley, though, a lot on the tape. There's a lot of just jogging to start his routes. There's not a lot of running his ass off. There's a lot of laziness in some of his game. I don't know if it's NIL. I don't know if it's because Arizona wasn't as good. I don't know if it was a change in head coach regime with their former head coach going to Washington. I don't know what it was, but he was not as play in, play out dominant as we had seen the year prior. And yeah. But definitely a hell of a player when he wants to play.
I have to imagine that changes on an NFL team.
Yeah, you would. But, it's like you say, we had Justin Blackmon be a top 10 pick, and he wouldn't give up pot to play football. Some guys get money and never cut it on. I'm not saying that Tet's that at all. There is a concern for me and just how he didn't give it 100% this year.
Look, I mean, there was a quote in the pre-draft where he said that he hasn't watched tape. So, I mean, that was one of the things that I kind of was taken aback. Like, wow, really? You're a high-level receiver prospect, putting up the points, the yards you are, and the stats you are, and you don't watch tape? Like, and then you kind of go back. It's like, it's not that he wouldn't watch tape; it's just that he hadn't.
Yeah,
so
that was an interview from when he was a senior in high school.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, so just out of curiosity, I just want to hear, like, Panthers, who would you have taken over Tet? Would you have taken Tet, or is there another guy that's like, I would have gone in?
I would have waited until day 2 because, you guys are thinking this landing spot, and the other. Dallas still had, the 12th overall pick in the 2nd round and had already drafted another offensive lineman top 12. So I would have waited, and then, honestly, Tet would have been very close to my top guy in this spot just because of the draft capital. But it is just one of those things where they're still a concern, which just shows how bad this class is.
Yeah. No, for sure. So you're thinking, like, if Henderson or Judkins went to Dallas?
Well, yeah, because Javante is a shell of himself to me. He doesn't
Yeah.
run with the same slashing ability, and Miles Sanders has been pretty much put on the back burner, and that's all they have. So if they would have taken a predominant name in the second round after addressing the offensive line in the first, that would have been probably who I would have preferred at slot 4, but that didn't happen. So
There you go.
I look, I don't disagree. I think when you compare the receiver class of last year to this year,
Oh,
Tet
there's
is
no
probably
comparison.
the fifth guy off the board in that class. But in the class that we have here, I think it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I understand the risk. So yeah, talking in terms of time. So I make that pre-draft pick, and the Dolphins decides that we have, again, in this year being the first year we're trying this, we have a unclocked draft here where he can sit on the clock and wait for more information, aka day 2 draft capital for where these landing spots are going to be. And I don't blame him for that. Look, some of us love the risk, upside, downside, and everything that come with, not knowing where some of these guys are going to land. And I just described part of my process for taking Tet was I knew where he was going, and that gave me the confidence to pull the trigger on him over guys I might have had higher on my board otherwise. That said, Dolphins waits, gets more information. Then around 9 o'clock on Friday night, takes Trevion Henderson, New England. So, to the surprise of nobody, I had a lot of conversations, offers exchanged, trying to get 6, 8, and 9 from Dolphins because I had a vision in my head before I got the first pick of a world where I might have the 3rd through 10th pick in this draft, which would have just been fun to get 8 players and have that be the foundation of my team. That was not going to happen because Dolphins, I think, didn't want to get rid of all of those picks. And I think he put them up on the draft because, look, you make offers with somebody, you get a sense of who they are as a trader. And I think Dolphins enjoys getting offers, and he'll take an overpay, but otherwise he just enjoys getting offers. But I think his vision was this was going to be the second to last draft that he tries to build through. So last draft, he sold everything, started acquiring picks for the future, has a mountain of them, and this was going to be the first draft he starts building on. So he's targeting players that are not going to step in immediately and just eat. He wants to take the guys that might be a little bit buried, but have that high talent value that will break ties against people right now who are drafting for a little bit more need. He's drafting for give me the higher talent that are going to take a little longer to develop so I can keep my points low and get one more year of picks to build out my team with this class and next year's class. And it's more of a Seahawks strategy build than a lot of others. But I think he executes the 3 picks here flawlessly with that in mind. So Trevion was his first pick at 106, and I think with that context makes a ton of sense.
I agree.
All right. I spent a lot of the time talking on that one, so I get it. Any other thoughts on Trevion before we move on? I know you guys had expressed there might be some downside of him landing in New England. RJ, you're our resident New England fan. How do you feel about Trevion landing there versus other locations?
No, that's a fantastic landing spot. The new regime picked him, didn't necessarily pick Ramondre, so I definitely give Henderson the edge, and I think he's the caliber of running back to actually replace Ramondre. So I
Do you
like
think
it.
do you think he takes the job, or do you think he just slowly works into the alpha role and is like the 1A next year?
I don't know because we really don't know. Like, Vrabel took over with Derrick Henry in Tennessee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a unique situation. Like, it's not like you could just install a new running back there when you have a talent like that. So I don't really know like what his preference is, but I could see Henderson being like the starter week 1.
The only thing I would note about the pick is the offensive line changes they've made this year have been to more of a versatile zone run and power run team, with getting Bradbury for center, getting the very mobile Will Campbell, moving Strange to guard, he was guard. My apologies, but he has some center versatility. They just never used him there. But that works great with a back like Travion because he can do both. Whereas with Ramondre, you're not necessarily going to want to have your guys pull a lot for him. He's better just running straight at the line.
Yep.
Most of the time.
Yeah, and I really like that Will Campbell pick. I think that they're headed in the right direction. This was an outstanding draft for the Patriots.
Still not thrilled with the Campbell pick, but that's more
You don't like Campbell?
concern about the player, not the person. Like, love the person, just not a huge fan of. Like, I view him more as a guard.
Yeah,
Just because he's short-armed or what?
Just the way he plays. Like, he's cut like a Quentin Nelson. Where I just don't think using that type of draft capital on a guard is the smartest thing.
I mean, like,
he's a lot like Peter Skoronski too. Like he's going to be solid, and he did a good job against SEC guys. But I don't think he's ever going to be a dominant tackle, just for physical problems. I've said it in the chat previously. The other thing, he's got a weird stance, so moving him from tackle to guard isn't going to be as easy as it was with Skoronski either. So he's an interesting case because if he's struggling at tackle in the middle of the season this year, I don't even know if you play him. I think he goes to the bench until he gets a stance that will work on the interior offensive line. It's just one of those things where it's like, baseball, if you got a guy who's batting 318 and it looks funky, you don't mess with it. If he's batting, 117, we need to work on this.
Right.
And it's going to be one of those situations potentially for him this year.
And I will say, like, I've gotten over the short arms because apparently everybody at the combine had weird measurements where, like, you probably should just go with pro day measurements and Senior Bowl measurements.
Well, like, the Chargers have an outstanding left tackle, and he was short arm, and there was a lot of talk about him moving to guard, and he's just been Slater's been unstoppable.
No, what I'm saying is like how we weigh that information, like especially like a Campbell. Like I think the big one that at the combine when they're like, 32 and 7/8 or whatever, like I think that was just wrong because he had multiple measurements in the 33s, and there were like a handful of cases like that kind of hurt different players throughout the draft, and it all stemmed from combine measurements rather than everywhere else.
Well, part of it to me though is the measurements are supposed to be confirmations of stuff and or to see if you have room to grow with your physical ability. My issue concerns with Campbell still comes down to the tape, because you go back to not this last year but year before, week 1 they're playing LSU's playing Florida State, and Jared Verse bullies the shit out of him all game to where they're chipping with the tight end and it doesn't matter. He's still getting pressure. He's pushing the pocket. He's getting sacks. He even got a strip sack in that game against Jaden Daniels. The longer, more physical brutes, especially when you get to the NFL level and everybody's an all-star, are going to give him some troubles.
Did he play
but
any
he's
Jared
still got a
Verse
chance to be very good.
players this year? Because I feel like if you improve from last year to this year, that's a good sign. Right? If you hold it down, you're not letting sacks, you're not getting penalties, like that's good. Seeing growth is good.
No, he's definitely a good player. Like that's why he went 4th. It's just that with this class, there's not a lot of just perfect prospects. Everyone has some really big questions or some flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say outside of, I think there were two blue chip no brainer prospects in this draft. I take that position as someone who got them both, but outside of them, I think you could raise a question, not necessarily a red flag, but yellow flags for any other prospect in this draft. Whether it be conference, whether it be time in the starting role, whether it be tape, whether it be measurables. You don't have sort of the, long list of blue chip prospects you usually have. And I think we talked about this in pre-draft stuff that some people said that they had only 15 players with first round grades in this class. So it became very much a question of what happens with the sort of top 10 to top half of the draft here, and how do people respond to that? Do positions that usually don't get the draft capital get pushed up because they actually have a first round value in those, or do we see more moving back or moving out? I think part of Jacksonville trading up was for that reason, but again, I think it's things you have to consider when you're not just able to look at a chart. You actually have to look at the prospects.
Yeah. Agreed. Most of my blue chippers were all like trenches guys, defensive tackles, and Will Johnson, but apparently his knee is destroyed.
Yeah, that was weird how far he fell. It must be bad.
Right. Yeah. That was one of those things that like none of us were really aware of. Like,
No.
regardless of how much we like him or what we've seen, like apparently we were just wrong about his physical condition.
Yeah,
A lot of that stuff came out really late.
Right.
Yeah. Like with Will Campbell, I saw a couple sources say they think that some medical teams took him off because they think he might have chronic knee issues. They don't think it's going away. And then like Jihad Campbell was pretty much like the apple of the eye of Tampa from everything I could see. And then all of a sudden it's, both of his shoulders and one of his knees is kind of messed up. And all of a sudden it's like, they're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah. I heard that
we got a lot of that.
because we were aware of a shoulder injury, but like apparently some teams just took him completely off the board because they just didn't think that he would recover properly.
Yep.
No, I mean, there are certainly plenty of teams out there, one in particular that, you have a character issue. You have some, injury issues that we need to give you time to recover from and may need to spell you so that you can get the most out of you. Welcome to the Howie's farm for highly talented college recruits, especially if you went to the Georgia or Alabama.
Here's an interesting layer, and we can all put on our tinfoil hats and think about it. But maybe these medical issues has something to do with NIL money and the players being able to go elsewhere for second opinions.
Ooh, that does make a little bit of sense. All right, so we'll keep going here. 107. I talked a big game all afternoon, projecting that this was going to be Jackson Dart. And full transparency, I had set my pre-draft at 2:30 in the afternoon when I went to a doctor's appointment as Jackson Dart at 107 if Dolphins made their pick. If it wasn't Dart, it was going to be Trevion Henderson. So I did that, and I went to the doctor. And as I'm listening to more coverage and understanding kind of what the post-draft press conferences are saying and what some of the coach speak is, first off, it's evident that the Giants love Jackson Dart. No question. Dable sees him as his Josh Allen. And if you think about what Josh does well, it makes a lot of sense. Josh does great getting the ball out down the field. He does great getting the ball in dump-offs. And if you look at how Dable had Jones attacking in the Giants scheme last year, it was pushing the ball down the field to Neighbors, and it was getting the ball out quickly to Wandale. So those are strengths of darts and sets him up to succeed. That said, it seemed like mixed reports as to whether they were going to even consider him for the starting job to start, or whether it was going to ride half the season out. And I just see the potential in that situation where Ruff struggles, Jameis struggles, and they're 1-5 before the rookie quarterback gets a chance to come out there, and the Mars say to Dable, enough is enough, and he's out. So now you have that awkward situation where you have potentially a new GM, a new coach, and neither picked that first-round quarterback that just got traded up for last year. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping Dart gets a chance with this regime because they seem to be the right fit. But the Giants haven't always made the right decision when it's come to players, their coaching staff, and general management staff, and a path forward. So I went with what I feel is the safer pick of one of the top two talents in the draft in a position of constant need in our league, defensive end, with Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I don't fault you for that at all. I was in the same boat with Jackson Dart. The coaching staff is kind of on its last leg. If they don't do well this season, I don't think anybody would be shocked to see them be shipped off. And coaches in their last season are always trying to save their own ass. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Jackson Dart thrown under the bus. And then, they have a few bad games as a rookie. Then a new coaching staff comes in. They didn't draft him. It's not their guy. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. So I don't blame you at all here. I was a little surprised to see Carter go so early. But at the same time, like you said, defensive end in this league is in high demand, especially after the position changes. So it makes sense.
Yeah, but to me, the only issue, I love Abdul Carter. He's probably going to be worth a tremendous amount. It's just at this current moment, with him being the only guy off the board, this feels a lot like last year when we watched Byron Murphy go 31st overall in our league. And then I take Braden Fisk at like 44, and then we don't see a defensive tackle get drafted until like the middle of the third round, to where it's like as much value as he gives you, how many of the second or third tier guys could you have gotten instead of him? Which I know there's cap years trading up for this kind of value, this, that, and the other. It's just I'm a little surprised the overall theme of the draft on how many later round, not as secured offensive players have gone over some of these premium defensive players, especially when last year we had a defensive unit lead the league in points. Like, as good as our best offensive unit was, we had a defensive unit score more points than any offense. And we're still not drafting defense.
I fully agree with you. And look, we're on a podcast, so I'm going to try and do this without table talk. But
do it.
I mean, we've had a defensive end and a linebacker go 25 picks into the draft. And once we got through those first, I'd say, 8 or 9 picks, there's a lot of questions around those guys. And you know what? I'll extend it a little bit further. I'll say through RJ Harvey at 114. That up through there, I can fully support, back, agree with anyone taking any of those guys in the top 13 offensive players taken. As soon as we're taking Jack Beck ahead of some of these defenders, I question what the hell we're doing. And again, I want to save some of the discussion on this until we get a little bit later, but I have been trying to trade up since the middle of the first round to pick up additional defensive players, and I can't get in to save my life, and they keep dropping. And this is the thing that kills me every year when I have to start consolidating picks. It's if I stayed put in this range, I'd have 5 of these guys, and I'd be just that scene, swimming in coins and Scrooge McDuck's money bin. Like that's how I'd be feeling right now. But instead, they keep dropping, and you guys who have all of the early seconds now are living the dream.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's just unfortunate. Like I said to begin it, I don't hate that you drafted him either. It's just a shame to see, his value get kind of lessened by just no one else following in the IDP footsteps. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily agree. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys to like in this class, but like Mike's already got the one surefire starter. Like, why are you gonna rush out and be the next guy that takes defensive end 2 when like there's no difference between defensive end 2 and defensive end 11 in this draft?
At the same time, are you drafting defensive end 2 or a 4th string running back? At what point does the scale finally tip?
Sure. Yeah, at a certain point, like I do, but that's more of like just there won't be any offensive players left that even have a chance, and like yeah, I consider that just for the like for the potential hit of like an offensive player. I don't really hate the idea of the lack of defense so far. Like I think it could probably extend not a whole lot longer, but if we had like 5 or 6 more offensive players taken before we had like a run on defense, like I wouldn't hate it. Because like, yeah, sure, some of the defensive players may have better real life draft capital than the offensive players you're taking, but like there are 3rd round defensive ends that have just as much of an opportunity to succeed as the guys taken in like the mid 1st and 2nd. Like there's just so much talent at like some of the defensive positions that it's like, why risk the 1st round draft capital in our league on somebody that might not hit because they have, like I said, just as much of a chance to hit as 9 other guys at that position. Like,
So I agree with.
I'm just giving the alternative logic. Like I do think that it's extremely deep, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind taking some defensive players right now, but I do understand the logic of not using any 1st round picks on defensive players when there's just so many slightly above average ones that you can take.
So I agree with both of you, but I think to the Commander's credit, his point makes a lot of sense. Like once you start drafting Bashaw Tootin, Kyle Williams, Jalen Knoll, like Jalen Knoll's the 2nd rookie wide receiver that Houston drafted. Now, could he be good? I have no idea. Will he have opportunities? Probably not. At that point, like once you're at that drafting a guy that's probably not going to see the field as an offensive player, I would definitely start looking at high draft capital defensive players. Because like Colson Loveland went 16, he's top 10 pick. Makes a lot of sense. Matthew Golden somehow managed to make it to 18. He's a 1st round wide receiver.
Well, Rory, the best way to simplify it is just like, what's the maximum upside of, the guy that is going into an offense with an already established wide receiver 1, an earlier draft pick, is slotted in to be the 3rd guy. And then there's also, another guy returning versus taking a starting, caliber player who has a lot more invested draft capital on the defensive end position or wherever else it might be. But yeah.
Because let's see, how many edges were taken in the first? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 edges taken in the 1st round. 6 if you count Jahad Campbell.
I'm glad that you clarified starting caliber.
Yeah,
because ultimately I think that's the issue. Is like if there were guys that were taken where we're just like, yeah, for sure, like there's nobody else on the edge that's even going to compete with them. Like those are the type of players in years past where like, yeah, you use a 1st round pick on them, but like even the higher end guys that haven't been picked, like they're just there's other guys competing with them at those jobs. Like the next podcast we do, like all the defensive players, the same thing's going to happen. Like, oh yeah, they'll be good if they can carve out a role more than being a rotation guy. And that's like guys taken in the 20s of this draft. Like the surefire starters are the positions that we don't value. Defensive tackles. There's like one safety that's like just common sense. He's going to be a starter playing like 90% of the snaps. But like all the edges and linebackers, like outside of Carter, none of them are guaranteed to be like day one starters.
I mean, can we say names at this point? Because like
I don't think they want to, but I think the
No.
easiest way to say it is not all of us agree with that statement.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Like
guys,
there's guys. Yeah.
in the top 14 that will probably see the field a lot this year.
Maybe, probably, but like not guaranteed.
No, not guaranteed, but more guaranteed than a third round receiver coming into a system behind another rookie with an established stud. I don't.
See that one's a unique one. Like, would
That's
I?
polite.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is stepping up to take that guy. Like, I don't know if anybody's stepping up to take the Raiders wide receiver that you said, or
Sure. Well, I mean,
the-
we're looking at receivers taken in the third, running backs taken in the fourth.
right. I mean, like, I don't hate the idea of taking like a Kyle Williams or like my pick, like Jaden Higgins, like above some of these like defensive players with first round draft capital. Like, completely fine with those.
Jaden Higgins was basically first round draft. Like I consider 34 as right there still. So I don't
I don't know
disagree with that.
about you guys, but I enjoyed him going at 34, knowing that T. Higgins went at 34 as well. It's just the Higgins pick.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
the Higgins pick, man.
That's what we have to
And,
call
like,
it from here on out. The Higgins
You know,
pick.
Trey Harris, he's a later second, but he's going into a situation that's very favorable. There's no receiver outside of Lad McConkey that you can count on, and he's going to stretch the field. Like that's going to be basically his role, and I think that's phenomenal. Herbert's got a big arm; he's pretty accurate downfield, and Harbaugh is going to call the odd deep shot. I think
Yeah.
it's a good pick.
Oh,
It's just great to see a guy in the role that they're like really good at college. It's like, hey, what does Harris keep doing well in college? Like you watch tape on Jackson Dart, and hey, he's hit the deep ball. And who is it? It's always fucking Harris.
Yep.
I'm sorry, not always. 70% of the time, it's fucking Harris.
Or he's running across the field in a slant because he's one-on-one getting bumped and the guy's shading outside. So he's just open every time.
Yeah, because of necessity, he basically played the Roma Dunze role, like just bail you out of every crappy situation.
And I
well,
love it.
it wasn't necessarily that. Ole Miss's offense, I watched a fuck ton of it. I love Jackson Dart. Part of the reason I like him so much is all he's shown is raw ability so far because of the system Lane Kiffin had him in. And Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, it's the other team we're playing sucks ass. I have these great athletes outside. There's a one-on-one outside. Hey, Dart, alert and just chuck it deep. They can't keep up. All right, coach. 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
over and
super
over
raw.
again.
I mean, super raw, but freaked. I mean, he's a great natural athlete. I think that's why he was compared to Josh Allen. It's like he does get things other guys can't do.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough bashing on the 20 through 25th pick.
Where'd we go off the rails?
Lose their burden.
Okay.
So,
What?
Probably,
Did it really? We haven't even gotten to
we,
the
lo-
part
we
yet.
lost the rails at Abdul Carter of again a very good point of him being one of the two defensive players off the board. So circling back, we got a couple of players before again we hit our varied lines of demarcation of when we should start introducing some of these defensive players. And look, we don't have to say who, but we can I think kind of put the hand up when we cross that line of hey, this is where I would start considering a defender. I already mentioned mine was after the 114. So once we cross that line, you guys, by all means, do the same kind of thing. Put your hand up of where we went. But anyways, going back to the Dolphins strategy of give me the guys who are blocked, give me the talents that we thought higher of that are going to take some time to get out from behind the people in front of them. And 108 and 109 make the most sense in the world. Luther Burden set up as the third receiver and probably the sixth option in that offense right now, but had the talent that had us considering him as part of the top 3 set of receivers last year. And Jackson Dart. A lot of potential, a lot of skill set in a situation of a coach who identified it, loves it, and traded up for him. And look, he's got the right weapons in New York to go do what he did in Ole Miss and even add to it. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Dolphins long term. He's just continuing to acquire players that are going to take a little bit of time and try and give himself one more year of acquisition before he starts going after it.
So I know you can't really operate a fantasy team like this, but if you were drafting Jackson Dart, do you feel at all concerned that the Giants lose, end up with the first overall pick, a whole new regime, and go Arch Manning?
That's
Well,
something
Josh-
that you have to take.
Yeah. Well, the issue with Jackson Dart comes to he doesn't have a snap count. He doesn't have a cadence. He's never dropped back out of anything other than shotgun. He's great at pre-snap alignment reads. He struggles post-snap alignment changes. His scouting report, honestly, for me, reads a lot like Will Levis. He's just a better athlete, and he was more successful pretty much high school and college than Will Levis was.
Yeah.
So it's one of those guys where he needs some time to cook, and he needs a good offensive line. And if you can give him both of those things and let him start, you'll see what you can get.
Yeah. I don't know if Arch Manning comes out for the Giants with the number 1 overall pick, but that would certainly be a fear of mine.
I think we saw a big thing happen this last year where in this draft where guys are not going to come out as just free willingly anymore. Like it was reported Quinn Ewers had an offer of like $8.5 million to stay in college. His first contract is what, $1 million. Sorry to name someone who's still available, but I don't see him being very relevant for us. But I'm just saying, for the future of college to the NFL, some of our guys who got drafted later, who still had some eligibility, some chance of NIL earnings, I don't think they're going to come out anymore. I think they're just going to ride it. Arch doesn't need the money, but also if you go back and you really follow the Mannings, his grandpa's already talked about wanting to see him start for several years. Whether or not he does this, that, and the other, who knows? Like that's future person's problem. But if you're tanking for Arch, I wouldn't put everything into it. But this is just a great class next year anyway. There's a lot of eligible guys that have better ceilings than what we had this last year.
Yeah. And, for Arch, maybe this doesn't even come into the factoring of these guys, but if you're chasing the greats, like if you're Arch Manning, you think you could be just as good as Peyton and Tom Brady and those Hall of Fame top 5 all-time quarterbacks, do you want to go back to college for another year, burn a year of your career that you could be using to get closer to those guys? I don't know how much of a difference.
That sounds like a great conversation for next year. And I think we should probably talk about the next guy on the board because we're not even out of the top 10 yet.
All right.
Well, again, the point of this podcast is we're not doing this to try and be like, oh, we got to an hour, we're done, let's talk trades. Like, we're gonna be here for a minute. Like, we're an hour and 10 minutes into it. We're not out of the top 10, and this isn't how this normally goes. Like the first one of these that we did, I think we went 7 or 8 hours, and at one point, former Jets was giving cooking class basically because I had to step away to pick up my kid or something like that, and that's just how we were filling the time. And it was,
well, and we've already kind of jumped forward a little bit. So once we get to those later picks, it's going to go a little quicker because we already talked about
that's also true. Like when we do this for sort of part 2 or part 3, we're going to be probably going through a couple picks at a time, or just kind of picking out the ones that we really like. But again, I think the top of the draft. This is where most of us have studied the most, and where we're going to have a lot of our takes. That said, a lot of this is more chalk than a lot of things, and I think we're about to get to the point where the landing spots are impacting feelings on things, versus talent versus league format, and we're going to start to hit a couple picks that some of us just don't really get. But again, that's not here at 10. 10, Cardinals take Emeka Egbuka. Very much in the same mold as what Dolphins are doing, except Cardinals, I think, are closer to mattering. I think in best of all worlds, Cardinals was hoping Burden was going to fall here so we could stack Burden with Caleb. But Egbuka has the talent, is linked to a very good quarterback in Baker Mayfield. The people ahead of him are aging, and they can get out from under those contracts in the next year or so. And it's not the same situation. So I don't want to do the lazy analysis and say it's the same thing. But if you look at what JSN did in Seattle, where he was drafted as the apparent third behind 2 more established starters, and now after last year in year 2, some have him in their top 3 or top 5 receivers in all fantasy. That is in the range of outcomes for Emeka Egbuka. So I get it. I don't fault Cardinals for taking him here at 10, and potentially because of the landing spot, getting a much higher floor player than he probably would have gotten otherwise at this pick.
Yeah, well, I think also if you just go to consensus, most people's boards, it's between him and Golden at this point of who's available, and whether or not you flip those two. This could have easily just been his best player available. So
Definitely true. Because I don't think a lot of people are considering like tight end as being one of the foundational building blocks of teams. Getting like what you consider as a number 1 wide receiver. I like it.
Yeah, if you swap Dart and Golden, like that is the top 10 is the 10 that I think a lot of us expected. I guess some of us expected Dart to go there.
I mean, he's a quarterback, so there's always going to be a premium on that. He's got first-round capital invested in him. He's in a relatively favorable situation, so I get it.
I always consider the good but wait a year guys to start to go at like 10 or 11.
Was McCarthy considered that, or was he considered a year 1 starter?
No, I thought of him as a wait a year type of guy.
I mean, that's where he went, like 107.
Right. Fair.
I'm not too worried about Emeka and the wait a year thing. Mike Evans has hamstring problems. Chris Godwin's coming back from a major injury. They're going to want to rotate their guys, keep him fresh anyway. He's going to play. It's just, is he going to be an alpha 1 this year? No. But is he ever going to be an alpha 1? Some people think yeah. Some people think he's just going to be one of those, Devontae Smith 1A high 2 guys. So,
I mean, you do have to worry about Jalen McMillan. So, like, does McMillan eat into that? Does he play an entirely separate role?
Well, the only thing there is they're both heavily slot merchants coming out of college.
I mean, Egbuka still has he still has a route to just being the guy on that team. Like, Evans doesn't need to be he's not a volume type of guy. Like, he can survive off of 9-10 targets a game, or Egbuka can just be, like you said, slot merchant. Just be the consistent 11 targets, average just over 10 yards a catch. He can definitely carve out being a prominent offensive piece for them.
Yeah, and McMillan last year, that's all he did at Washington. But last year, he did a great job learning the offense, and a lot of his production late in the year. I think he finished the season with 4 straight touchdown weeks or 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks or something of that nature. He actually was playing outside on a lot of those touchdown rips. So he's shown a very good, quick grasp of the offense. But obviously, it's going to be a new offense now. So that's also putting a twist to everything. So
It's just a more open offense than you would assume having Godwin and Evans on the team.
Yep. All right. Moving to our next pick here. So actually, before we do our next pick, we have our next trade. So we're in that period of time thinking, well, we'll see when Bill shows up. And he was there. He was ready to go. He was sending offers out. He was taking offers. He was figuring out what he wanted to do with his team. And while he was working through a couple of things, we had the Chiefs and Ravens swap Xavier Smith, Daniel Ekule, 438, and the Chiefs 26th third for the Niners 26th third. So again, Chiefs dumping a couple of players for some draft capital upgrades. And then Panthers doing some minor adjustments, going from 127 and 213 to 130, 309, 313, and the Panthers getting his second round pick back. So, again, I like that sort of shuffle a little bit there. I think it serves both teams well, and the value seems to be pretty much dead on. So I like it for all those reasons. All right. And then I think that shifts us back to the draft, where I'd say probably our first really controversial pick so far. 111, the Bills taking Tyler Warren. So pre-draft, I don't think there's any question this is the first tight end off the board. And in our league, where 32 tight ends start, and you need a tight end if you're going to be competitive, or if you don't have one, you probably need 2 or 3 tight end 2s or 3s to try and give you equivalent points and hope one hits. This is about the spot that the first tight end makes sense to go. I just don't know if it's Tyler Warren.
That's tough. If Tyler Warren was your favorite tight end pre-draft, then yeah. Because Chicago's so crowded. I mean, your hope with Warren is that the Colts get Manning next year, essentially, right?
Right. I mean, that's kind of the thing, is either it's one situation, Chicago could get less crowded. The other situation, Indy fixes quarterback. Neither is something that you can really expect to help this year. And if you're going to take tight end, I feel like, again, Loveland probably has the tiebreaker here. But for a team like the Bills, which I believe this is before he trades Dak, it's before he starts, trading off pieces other than Max to rebuild. He's still in a position where if he wants to try and go for a wild card, he can do it. Or he can start using these picks to acquire, I'd say, higher potential pieces to flip. A tight end in our league at 111 is a luxury. This is not the pick you make if you're building.
Yeah. It's kind of what I mentioned with Egbika. It's like you don't start your foundation of a brand new team with tight end.
Again, if you're looking to insulate the pick, either of the running backs make more sense. I'd say even Caleb or Judkins. I don't quite put RJ in that realm yet, but Caleb going to a nuts landing spot in Pittsburgh and Quinshawn going to a really good landing spot in Cleveland. Either of those guys, and their value is going to appreciate or at least stay stable. A tight end, especially one that probably won't see more than 50 targets next year. He's going to be getting offers of late first for Warren by midseason if he hasn't started getting them already.
Nah, second rounder.
But that's what I mean. Like, again,
If you're going to get a return on investment, he literally has to have a Sam Laporta rookie season.
and I
And
don't
you're
think,
never going to profit off him. You will
yeah,
only.
I
get a
don't think
return.
Richardson or Daniel Jones can give that to you.
But you also just have the issue of, the NFL does not draft well at tight end. And the biggest issue typically to me, and the biggest, consistent factor is they draft a lot of these H's, these split outs, and then they try to make them into these Y's, these end line tight ends. And Tyler Warren is one of those guys. He's a prototypical H. He's going to go in and be their, big slot, for instance. And, that's a team that's going to want to run the ball a lot, and he's going to have to become a better blocker quick to stay, I'm not going to say he's necessarily going to go off the field. It's just when you're a great blocker at tight end, like a George Kittle, Rob Gronkowski, all these guys, the play action game is just free money. And I don't know if he's a free money play action tight end.
Yeah. 20 years ago, he would have been a fullback. Like, he's that type of a player. So he might be a weapon. He's definitely one of those unique guys that could end up just being his own type of position or usage, I guess you could say.
Well, there's only a couple of them, like in the league. Like, not to
Right.
cut you off, but it's like Evan Ingram, Trey McBride, and that's about in the list. There's not a lot of teams that just accept H to play and to play heavily and to be a big part of the offense.
Yes.
Also, they don't have a quarterback.
Mhm.
Who needs a quarterback today?
That's a minor issue.
Totally
Well,
minor.
It feels like it's a little bit of the Alabama room, but like Jalen Milroe. It's like everybody's transferring out. Why are they transferring out? The quarterback can't get them the ball.
Just, run the wing T.
And, that's kind of the thing right there. Like, Indy's drafted a lot of offensive weapons. So hopefully someone makes it work there, but I don't know if that quarterback's on the roster.
All right. So then, after the Bills go, this is one of those picks that I would have bet a substantial amount of money what the pick was going to be. And I'm wrong, but it's not necessarily wrong because it's the wrong pick or the wrong value. I think it's just wrong because there's an obvious receiver I feel still available at this pick, Matthew Golden, who was drafted in the first round to be the number one on their team. The Jags, you don't want to take players in this high in the draft based off of need necessarily. But you have Josh Jacobs. You have Kyron Williams. You need another receiver on this team next to Keon Coleman and Calvin Ridley. Matthew Golden is the almost ideal third receiving option on his team to complete his offense. And he goes running back. Caleb Johnson.
The other thing is just how many explosive plays is Caleb Johnson going to have at the NFL level? It's just like the explosiveness of the two athletes is so massively different.
He's going to have
3.
12. 12 total
Yeah.
over 7 years.
I say 3. Like, he's a good running back. But like he's gonna be one of those guys that can average like 6 yards a carry, but his longest is going to be like 11.
Like it's the old exhibit meme. Yo, dog, I hear you like Najee Harris. Let me give you a Najee Harris.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Pittsburgh, I hear you like running backs who run a 4.5 who are 230 pounds. Here you go. So, I think Caleb was my 5th running back coming out of the top 5 running backs coming out of the class this year. I think even with his landing spot, he's still my 5th running back. But again, this is the right range for him to go. I really thought it was going to be Golden here. And like I said, I was wrong. I was surprised. But, it's still a good value pick for the Jags to continue to add to their offense. 13, again, I think makes perfect sense again. Cardinals needed a running back to kind of help gel that room together. They have Jalen Wright, who's an opportunity to step up. He just traded for Travis Etienne before the draft started. Jaleel McLaughlin, unfortunately, probably lost a little bit of value, so he may have had an opportunity to platoon some pieces together here, but instead went with Judkins, who, again, I feel is a better player than Caleb, so I like that. I think it's an equivalent landing spot, so I like that. Again, I think it's just the right pick for Cardinals here based off where he is. So, again, to the Panthers' point from earlier, I traded Ashton Genty for Emeka Egbuka, Quinshon Judkins, and a first-round pick next year. So that's a lot of value that he's adding to his team by trading down to pick up those picks. So good on Cardinals for that. And again, I think Judkins is the right pick here.
Yep. By the end of the year, maybe middle of next year, like he will be like a 3-down type of guy. Like he will get the vast majority of touches, like if given the opportunities.
I don't think I don't know if Cleveland's going to put him in that kind of role.
Slowly.
I think, and again, they drafted another running back in day 3 that should be complimentary. Jerome Ford was better in a complimentary role than a lead role there, and he's still there. I think they've all but basically said goodbye to Nick Chubb at this point. But again, that would throw a wrench in this. I don't think he's a 2-down back. I don't think that. I think he has the versatility to be a 3-down back. But I think they rotate in all 3 backs, and they're probably targeting somewhere in the 450 to 500 touches range in terms of the running backs. So I think maybe he's 200 touches this year, and to your point, grows into that 3-down role. But I think all 3 guys could continue to see a role and continue to be well positioned for a role in 2026.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely if they allow him to grow into that. Like he's for sure going to be one of the guys that gets, the lion's share of carries. It's a matter of like, does he succeed in pass protection when it's like called upon him? Like how does he do like in the passing game? Like does he catch everything around him? So like if he succeeds in those other 2, sure, he can be a 3-down back. Like I'm excited for that. But it is a matter of like if they give him the opportunity, because they might just be happy with him, rushing the ball and find somebody else to do everything else.
Yeah. Well, I think Chubb is visiting Chicago. I think I read something about that. And then other than that, I think it also comes down to a little bit of just how bad they've kind of been to a degree after Nick Chubb got hurt at running back. I don't think they want to fully rely on one guy anymore. As much as it felt like they did the last couple of years with Chubb, especially with Watson flopping as hard as he did.
Yeah, the past few years was more, that only person they could really depend on the offense.
Yeah, and then they ran him down, and it's one of those things where it's like, He had an unfortunate injury, but you just sit there and think, what if we had another guy? And it feels like they've taken the approach to where they're going to be more committee, wanting to have a committee. But obviously, if you have a guy who just takes over, you have a guy who takes over. So.
It's true. So a team that's hoping for a guy to take over, Commanders had moved up for this pick. I don't think it was live. I think, no, it was live. It looks like.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, Buccaneers had it from my deal with him and is interested in moving down. Or wait, let me just make sure I'm not lost. No, here I am. Okay. And you were willing to move up to give him some of the receiver depth he was looking for, sending over Tyler Lockett and Ricky Pearsall with the 215 for Blake Whiteheart, Tyquan Lewis, basically, well, essentially dumps, 114, 332, and 333. So Pearsall was a first last year with Lockett, who was newly signed with Tennessee, and the 215. So Buccaneers gets his quote stack, I guess. Pearsall, who is supposed to see an elevated role in San Francisco this year on the 215, and you get to move up and take RJ Harvey, running back with the Denver Broncos, who I think a lot of us had lower down in the rankings to start, but man, does Sean Payton love this guy.
I was quite fond of him through most of the draft process. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good pick. He is, I'd say, significantly better than the rest of the running backs that are available, as far as like what you can expect, opportunities and talent.
Yeah, I'd agree. Scadabo's the only one that I'm a little bit hesitant on, just because I like him so much, but it's not a great landing spot, and he's a little bit of a wild.
Right.
Harvey's a lot safer.
I guess I'll be the hater. I don't like it. The talent is there. The athlete is great. But to me, this is just going to be a guy who fills the old Reggie Bush role for him. Watching the tape, all they did was shotgun. And all he liked to do was dance around and run outside. And good hands, good natural hands down the field. But there's a lot to be left to desire on running inside and breaking contact. Great at, making moves in the open field. But I don't ever see him as a 3-down back. And taking a guy that's going to be more of a, third down scat, this, that, and the other is at that pick and giving up what you did, it felt heavy for me.
If he does well enough, he'll be considered an offensive weapon more than he will be a true running back.
Yeah, and in a Sean Payton offense, believe in Sean Payton. Definitely could be a very productive player. I don't doubt that at all. It's just I don't see the talent for this, but it could definitely pan out.
Chime in on the pick. This was more about Sean Payton than that offense than anything. Just to give you guys some statistics, because I work in finance and that is what my life is. Over 17 years, Sean Payton's offenses, the running back room has ranked first or second 12 times. So he loves his running backs. He loves those scat backs. He loves throwing the balls to those backs. So this guy having those hands and being that threat was the big upside to me. Obviously, if I was to pick before, I think having Jerome Ford, the pick would have been obviously the Cleveland running back, but this is how it fell. Other than that, I had no running back rostered really. Ford was it, and obviously Ford is now number 3 on the depth chart probably. So it was more of a need pick, but the landing spot was what I was focused on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree with the Sean Payton aspect at all. I really don't.
I like the pick. I thought it was a fine range for him.
Well, I mean, what you could do is you have Ford, and Cardinals has McLaughlin, so you guys can help each other and swap handcuffs if
We
haven't
have
already.
talked about it, but the holdup is the $20 million price tag on Jaleel McLaughlin. So,
That's not important.
and actually, in talking with him, the trade that went down with the Giants, it was actually supposed to be Jaleel McLaughlin. I think he hit accept before he realized which Denver running back it was. So that was not supposed to be Estime. It was supposed to be Jaleel at the $20 million price tag when he got ETN from Giants.
That makes an amazing amount of sense.
Makes a lot more sense looking at the trade. Yep. But anyway, here we are.
Yeah, the only last bit on RJ is just obviously everyone wants most running backs are like one contract guys, right? You know, majority of them don't make two contracts, but Harvey's also 24. So he's one of those guys where I really don't see a second contract.
Yeah, for me again, it goes back to the Peyton offense and the scat back. You know, the Darren Sproles of the offense, which I'd be more than happy to have, where those guys have more longevity than those bruising running backs that are, you know, you're pounding them in between the tackles. So the age wasn't as much of a concern. Obviously, 24 is loftier than a lot of other guys, but
Yeah, I
but
think
if he's
he's
in
the
that scat back
second
role,
or-
I was okay with it.
Yeah, I think he's second or third oldest guy at RB in the entire class. But yeah, I get you. I get it.
So yeah, as mentioned, I know I've got one other player that goes a little bit further down, but if we're talking about a defender that's still available and Jack Beck, I'm probably starting to break ties in favor of the defender. But 115 is if 111 I was head scratching because of the position. 115 is the first where I'm saying, why? Because if you're taking a receiver, why are you taking a receiver with less draft capital on a less good offense with a less good quarterback than Matthew Golden and less good measurables? I don't fault Raiders for taking a receiver here. I just can't fathom why it's Beck over Golden.
Yeah, I'm a big hater of Big 12 receivers. You know, I didn't like Quentin Johnson. I don't like a lot of them. I'm not as high on the upside of receiving ability on Travis Hunter as everyone else. I do like that he's paired with BTJ. I was a little bit more concerned he was going to go somewhere where they were going to really ask him to be the one.
Right.
But I don't know if you guys know this, you know, on the number side, like the bust rate of Big 12 receivers, even drafted in the first round, is over 60% in like the last 25 years. And Beck wasn't even a first round pick. So, you know, not going to an ideal offense, not going to this, that, and the other. There's a lot of red flags there to take him this high.
So, quick question on that stat. Is that current Big 12 schools or is that historical Big 12 schools? Like Texas
It's
used to be Big
like-
12 before they moved to the SEC.
Yeah, that's literally from like 2000 till now. It's right around the 60% or higher mark. It's bad.
No, but that so I guess what I'm asking is Texas part of that data set?
The Texas players that were drafted before they moved, yes.
Okay, got it. That was the answer to the question I was looking
Yeah,
for.
we'll be able to.
Yeah. So, look, everyone was saying you don't take USC receivers, and then Juju Smith and Michael Pittman proved everyone wrong. Just kidding. They did for a couple seasons there, but that's where I think we are with TCU receivers until we get a relatively consistent, good performance out of these guys. The doubt's just going to continue.
Yeah, a lot of it's just tape, though, guy to guy. But I get what you're saying.
Back to the trade side of the world. At 116, it was time for the Dolphins to get back into the thick of things, trading 123, 205, and the Jet second next year the Cardinals for 116 and 229. So in moving back 7 spots, the Cardinals pick up 24 spots in the second and a future second round pick. So bit of, I'd say, a hefty price to pay to move up, but Dolphins really wanted to stop the slide of Colson Loveland. So we talked about that being a crowded area this year, but Dolphins was willing to pay up to make sure he got his tight end that he wants to build around. So not worried about a crowded target room to start with, but feels that Loveland's going to grow into Caleb's security blanket.
I thought he was, I thought he was safer, a little bit safer than Warren, just because he did play a lot more end line Y and was a pretty good blocker. He had some inconsistent hand issues here and there. He's a lighter tight end still, though. He's like 240, so some concerns there. But he, it's another one of those. It's Ben Johnson offense, so that's the Sam Laporta. Probably not rookie year role, but maybe you're hoping something similar to what he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're hoping for, especially with Ben Johnson there. But it's tough to see him getting those carries or those touches. Like I look at some of these situations, and it's tough to see Loveland getting more than 60 or 70 targets in that offense. Again, I am not certain where those targets would come from. Keenan Allen, I think, obviously vacates about 100 targets, but the expectation, I would imagine, is Luther Burden's going to soak up a number of those. Number 2 tight end isn't usually a huge target area, and until Loveland beats out Kmet, that's where he's going to start. So, look, I heard a stat, as I'm sure most of you had, about 2 tight end sets with Ben Johnson that I think he liked to run them about 60 or 70% of the time. So Loveland will see this field plenty, but unless you're running an empty backfield, you can't run 2 tight ends and 3 wide receivers. So if maybe that's the intention of how Ben Johnson's going to set up his offense in Chicago, that could be telling. Or he just wants the versatility of being able to set up 17 different ways. And having Loveland stacked with Kmet, 3 deep at the receiver position, and a good set of running backs gives him kind of all of the tools you could hope for. And now he's going to do nothing but invest in line and defense for the next 4 years.
Well, the other thing that could just be interesting there is what if they just use Burden as a Debo and run him a lot out of the backfield? Because it's very plausible, because, a lot of his offensive yards over the last 2 years have come off of screens and things behind the line of scrimmage. And you got enough weapons. You've got some good blockers. It's very possible they could just use him in one of those roles early.
Yeah, I see a lot of Zay Flowers to Luther's game. So I think they set up a couple of packages and plays with that usage of Flowers in Baltimore in mind. But probably not as many touches as Flowers is getting in Baltimore. So we shall see more to come there. Raiders gets back on the clock with 117, takes Cam Scatabo. He had been drafted by this point, I think, right?
I don't believe so.
What time of the day? 10:44. He was early 4th, wasn't he?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was drafted at that point.
What was it?
140. 140 in the afternoon. So yeah,
Because the draft started early, like 9 o'clock, noon for you guys.
Yeah, he would have been drafted. So, but again, before I guess technically before that pick, we had 2 other trades go down. Both Saints giving up Curtis Samuel, 209, 210, 318, and my fourth next year for Kyle Juszczyk, Xavier Hutchinson, 130, 323, and Panthers second next year. So just kind of a repositioning trade here. We went back from 130 to pick up the 209 and 210, and then an upgrade in thirds for going from a fourth to a second in 26. Were you guys at the bar for this one? I feel like you and Sans are friends in real life, right, Panthers?
Yes, they are. I'll fill that in for him.
He just
Yeah,
dropped
I
the
feel
call.
like-
Yeah,
I feel like it's like a bar trade that, hey, let's figure something out here, and then, all right, well, I want to move up. All right, what about this? Let me add that, and then next thing you know, it's like, all right, yeah, that works for me. All right. Anyways, if he's not here to talk more about it, I won't belabor it too much more. Then the other trade that Saints did was doing the impossible. Starling Thomas, 131, 208, 307, and his third next year for Dak Prescott and Sterling Shepard. Bills being a massive Dak Prescott fan, primarily because when Dak came out as a rookie, that's when a lot of startups that I'm in with Bills were happening. And Bills took Dak in every single one. And then when Dak hit, victory lapped the hell out of things for the next 3 years. About, I called him, he was my guy, I took him here, look at this startup draft, I took him here, can't you see? Which reminds me of the age-old adage from Matt Berry, nobody cares about your fantasy team. I mean, obviously, except for us. But, like, real-life people don't care. They really don't. But, again, I did not think he would move off of Dak. And, look, I've been critical of Bills earlier on the pod. I don't want to keep saying critical things before people think sour grapes, but look, this is not what Dak is worth right now. Dak is worth a first on top of this.
Because I think if he had started trade negotiations trying to ship Dak earlier, before the draft started, he probably could have managed more. This is when the draft was already currently happening. So if he waits until we get our fresh, new, shiny refresh of picks and all of that fun mumbo jumbo, I definitely could have seen him getting another first on top of this for Dak. And plus, looking at his salary, he's at $19 million. In regards to QBs in this league, that's pretty cheap outside of the rookie contracts that we have.
So my question is, at what point do we consider him injury prone? Because 3 out of the last 5 seasons, he hasn't finished the year. He's been outside of the top, 15, almost top 20. He's 31. Yes, he just signed a big deal with Dallas. They are on the decline. So what point do you go, well, he's solid, kind of like a worse Geno Smith, more expensive Geno Smith?
That's reasonable. And again, has some of that upside. I feel like he's probably got 2 or 3 more years before he goes the way of the Russell Wilson. But I understand Bill's getting out from under him to get multiple picks as he tries to rebuild things. That said, he's in, I'll call it a very Cowboys type situation where he's trying to replace assets that he held on to too long and now are worth nowhere near what he's trying to potentially sell those assets for, and then finally settling on probably a discount on that. Like, I couldn't find an offer, but I'm certain I sent an offer for Dak sometime in the last couple of months, and I feel like the asking price for this is different than what I kind of poked around there. So, I think part of this is also just approach towards trading. Like, hey, you put someone on the block. Like, do you recall who some of the teams that had offered for him were before you go and take a deal? But, he's happy with what he got. And, glad he was able to add to his cadre of picks.
Yeah, I agree it's light, but I don't know if it's a whole nother first round pick on top of this.
All right. I think those take care of those trades before we have anything else. Next trade is Saturday at 7. So I think we've got a couple of picks between now and then.
Pretty big trade too,
Yep. So 18 Cowboys taking Matthew Golden, despite I think trying to potentially move out of the pick. Look, I was considering Matt Golden at 107. So for Cowboys to get him at 118 is massive, especially considering a need at receiver, as he, had moved away or is trying to move away. Devontae Adams, he's got to replace that production, and he's trying to go younger. So Golden just makes all the sense in the world for him, and is being taken 3 to 5 picks later, at least, than he should have been. So I think kind of a win for Cowboys and the right talent, the right prospect on a team that really needed a player like Matt Golden. So well done.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the biggest Matt Golden fan, but this is a steal. Plain and simple. You got guys being taken that were in the late second, third, fourth round before him. And then here goes Golden, 23rd pick in the draft, comes off the board at 18.
Yep. Hey, you know what? Sometimes it's good to be in it, because if you're in it, you can take part in it. If you can't, you got to pay up to get in. 119, Titans take Trey Harris. We've talked about him a little bit. I think, he makes a lot of sense, as we talked about earlier, in terms of how that team's going to play him. And I think best ball is the right format to try and get him in. I think year one, he's going to be looking at something like 40 receptions for over 800 yards and a couple of tutties.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset. Titans seems like he was pretty receptive to trading this pick. I was going to draft Trey Harris, and then the Cowboys picked, and he was set to auto drafts, and all that went down the toilet.
Whoops.
Whoops, indeed.
All right. So then we move on to Lions. So, look, you know what? I'm just going to say it. I sympathize with the Lions situation. Not all of us are degenerates for this stuff. Most of the folks who were, I'd say, cellar dwellers or really drafting this range have done a little bit more homework, it sounds like, than Lions did pre-draft. But look, he wanted to wait and get as much information as he can, and he is committed to doing that with every single one of his picks. So I think based on the feedback he got, we're going to see draft boards continue to refine. And as I'm listening to podcasts that have come out since the draft already, a lot of the players that he's looking at have jumped up boards. That said, Bioshul Tuten, who, again, speed demon, fast runner, a darling of a lot of the scouting community. I don't know if he's good enough to be the 20th overall pick, but, he's definitely worth a pick here. So I don't hate it. But that said, this for sure is that demarcation line where defensive players should be considered. If we're talking about Bioshul Tuten, it's time to start considering defensive players.
So I will talk on the positive side. He is a good player. He's not comparable to either of the running backs on Jacksonville, so there is an opportunity. He goes for the home run, but if you watch a lot of his tape, a lot of his best plays are when he's like a tiny little bruiser. If they aren't bubble screens where he just takes it to the house. So he can play a couple of different roles on that team. Potentially could be a good pick, but there are two talented running backs there already. So I don't
The
hate
Lion,
it.
yeah, I mean the Lions' biggest problem here. It's very simply he is absolutely desperate for running back points. He has Zach Evans, Kareem Hunt, Kendall Milton, and Kamani Vidal before he drafted Bayshon 2. Now, I get the desperation of like I have to add running back points, but I mean at some point you don't have a single defensive end that scored 100 last season. Yes, you have Lucas Van Ness and Laiatu Latu, but I mean neither of them have shown to be DN1s for fantasy. At some point you just gotta bite the bullet and take a defensive player.
And it's not unreasonable. I would argue that like the defensive ends left, though they're all good, their first year is probably going to be probably going to look a lot like the defensive end that he already has.
Yeah, but I mean you're looking at
And
you can pick
Latu.
up a running back drafted day 3, or there's
Oh yeah,
multiple edge players day 1 draft.
yeah. I like the player. I just don't like where he was taken.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got you.
No, and I agree with that. I think my point here is like this. Look, if you need a position and that position isn't available in the draft, I'm going to introduce a concept to people called trading. You take something of value you have that a lot of other people in the league want. You take something of value they have that you want, and you offer the opportunity to exchange them. So he has 20 and 22, in addition to, I think, 3 second-round picks that he could turn around and say, I'm not going to reach at a position just because I need something. I'm going to move that for a piece I like. And look, I also get the fact that he's wildly busy right now as he tries to complete, I think it's his doctorate, he was saying, while he's working in a whole mess of other things. So I get it. Not everyone has the time that we use to send out as many offers as we do. Got it. Understood. But if you're going to use this much clock to wait for news to come out,
At
Spend
least
5
request offers.
spend 5 minutes and send out offers for 120 to a couple of running backs that you think you like, or put in the trade bait, want to add a running back for this, and see what comes back.
Or even I just want to trade back. Like, hey, send offers looking to trade back, trade out of 120, or acquire a running back. Then you can just let things come in over the next 8 hours, review everything when you get to like when you're ready to draft and go, and none of these appeal to me. I'm just going to take the guy I want anyways. Yeah. It's like, at least then you made the attempt.
And again, you never know. Like, bad example. Could he have taken 20, 22, and I think he has 207
Mm-hmm.
and package that up for a guy like Trevion Henderson?
Yes.
I feel like those 3 picks would be enough to get you into the Trevion range. And Dolphins, again, will find a way to use these picks or trade them for more assets or more picks in the future. So,
And if you don't want a rookie, I bet you that package would net you Alvin Kamara, James Conner, maybe Chuba Hubbard. I mean, even guys like David Montgomery. I guarantee that'd get you DeAndre Swift. Mike?
What
I-
package?
I will not say what the offer was, but I definitely offered him DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson for the collection, a subset of the picks that we just talked about.
Yeah, I figured. So, I mean,
Absolutely did.
yes, you can draft a running back you like, sure. Or you can go with someone that's established. Yes, he's more, DeAndre Swift's $18 million. Okay, he had 190 points last year. You're not going to get that out of that fourth-round running back. It's third string.
And look, if you want to say, hey, Mike, sour grapes, you sent an offer, he said no, and now you're trashing him on the podcast. That's not what I'm saying here. All I'm saying is, look, I understand being strapped for time. I get it. I'm making a decision to do this podcast instead of 3 things I probably should be doing for work right now. I'm doing this because it's balance and I need to have this kind of outlet in my life or else I just tip over. So I get it. But if you're strapped for time, it's even more important for that time to be used in a way that is most beneficial to you. And waiting for new news to come out about these picks right now is not using the time in a beneficial way.
There is no news that's going to be coming out. It's middle of the draft. Nothing is happening.
Or it's just after the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that's going to happen here is people are going to love the picks, love the upside of them, or you're going to see UDFAs or veterans sign.
Yeah.
So if
I mean-
anything's going to happen, somebody's going to take a bath.
You're not going to be like, oh, it's the day after the draft, and the news just came out. Bashaw Tutin is the surprise RB1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars entering minicamp. It's not realistic. Yes, maybe something comes out like, I don't know, Jihad Campbell, second physical, discovers stress fracture in his foot. Okay. Does that really change if you're drafting him or not 4 months from the season?
I don't know. Anyways, so that's the 120. 121, Eagles taking Jaden Higgins. Look, I love this pick for so many reasons.
I just
But
love
I
this
think-
pick.
I think my favorite part of this pick is I know who I think RJ's number one most valuable asset in this league is. And I think there's a lot of similarities between Jaden Higgins and that player. Not only the fact that they play on the same team, not only the fact that they both play receiver for that team, but the type of receiver they are, I think has a lot of overlap. So this is RJ saying, you know what? I want this type of player in this type of situation, and I can't get him from the 49ers. So damn it, I'm going to just go take my own.
Yeah, it's my discount Nico Collins, and I'm thrilled.
Let's be honest, too. This was probably best player available, regardless.
Potentially, he was the next wide receiver up for me. I had him right outside of like the group that we talked about earlier in the podcast. Like
Matthew Golden, Trey Harris.
I had him above Harris. I had him like in the Golden Egbuka, like in that range. Pre-landing spot, and then landing spot I think is fantastic. Because we already see what that type of wide receiver can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great pick. I think that defender would make some sense here, but I don't know if I like a single defender on the board right now more than I like Higgins. I was shocked he fell as far as he did. There were some guys that went in the teens that probably should not have gone over Higgins. in a best ball format. But what do you do about that? Yeah, I mean, it's a great pick. Wide receiver 2 right off the bat.
In my opinion, he is the last of the guys that we should have some expectation of them being starters in their rookie year.
Yeah,
Everybody
for
else,
offense.
right, and everybody else on offense, though they may be in some people's eyes more talented or just as talented, the expectation to start early in their career isn't there.
Agreed.
That's true. All right, Lions back on the board here. Taking Terrence Ferguson. Landing spot, I think, says a lot about his jump. Unsettled situation at tight end in Los Angeles. So I think he makes a lot of sense. But again, this feels maybe a little early to take a third tight end. This feels more like I would rather use this pick to trade for a more established option. But in terms of cleanest path from current valuation to a role upside, I think Terrence Ferguson has probably the cleanest path of any of the remaining tight ends here. So Lions needed one, he needed a bank, he needed a tight end, and he took rookies to take both jobs. So whether he picked right or whether he picked foolishly is to be determined.
My favorite thing about Terrence Ferguson is his pro comp is Jake Ferguson. That is all.
So we have the Higgins pick at 34, and then you have the Fergusons. Not the same pick, right?
No, but similar comp.
Similar comp. I don't actually know where he was taken. Jake Ferguson draft. 129. He's a third day, round 4.
Got it. So not even close to the same.
Yeah, not even close. I actually thought Jake Ferguson was a higher draft pick than that. Anyways, it just made me laugh that like the draft profile for him was like pro comp Jake Ferguson. So guys, is that just lazy? Or like, yeah, they had the same last name, so they the same. Both tight ends. No.
I feel like that happens more often than not, especially in the NFL Network.
It's like, oh, Jaden Higgins. I haven't watched a lot of tape, but his last name is Higgins. Went in the same draft spot. T.
Gotta
Higgins.
be T. Higgins.
Yeah.
All right. So after moving back from 116, Cardinals is back on the clock and taking Kyle Williams here. Again, I think both need and best player available is on defense right now for Cardinals, but I don't fault Kyle Williams. I think when it comes to New England, Kyle Williams was the 5th pick of the 3rd round. So there's a lot of draft capital there. So don't get me wrong on that. But they have Stephon Diggs that they just signed there. They have Jalen Polk. They have Pop Douglas. They have Javon Baker. They've got a lot of receiving options there already.
They still got that older guy that blew his knee out 2 years ago, right? What's his name?
Demario
Oh,
Douglas.
Bourne?
Yeah, Kendrick Bourne.
Kendrick Bourne.
I think he's still on the team too, and he's probably going to stick around.
So, again, you have 5 or 6 receivers there. And then Kyle Williams, again, great pick. He's a great replacement for Kendrick Bourne. And look, I can't have another player named Kyle Williams on any of my teams. So please keep him the hell away from me. But that said, I know the draft capital. People are going to be like, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to get a role as wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3.
No,
I don't know about that.
I think you will.
He's going to have to fight for third receiver role there in an offense that Drake May is still getting the hang of.
Yes. I think he is going to fill a role for that team, certainly. Would not be shocked if he's their returner. Would not be shocked at all if he was on the field a lot, but I think he is definitely a distant fourth, maybe fifth in targets behind Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk, and both of their tight ends that Drake May loves throwing to. So, and then you also have Stevenson and Henderson taking targets away. I'd be shocked if he has more than 30 targets his rookie year. Other than that, I mean, like you said, he's got needs of defense. He has really no reliable defensive ends. I don't know if I'd be counting on Jonah Ellis putting up another 120-point season, 110-point season.
Yeah. So I do recognize I skipped over a couple of trades, so let me circle back on those real fast. There was a taxi theft on Spencer Rattler when Dolphins had to taxi him to draft Jackson Dart. Broncos gave $513 so that Dolphins didn't have to give them to him to Buccaneers. Pat's moving off of Justice Hill and Cooper Kupp to get Nick Chubb, $216 and $224. I feel like that's probably close to dead value for Cooper. And then Justice versus Chubb. Justice, it seems like, has a job. Chubb is still looking for one.
Yeah.
And then Pat's moves off Quiddy Pay with $224 to get Chris Braswell and $210 in his continued how can I acquire picks and try and get younger. So another, I'd say, on the younger side, vet for an even younger player still waiting to break out and an improvement in draft capital. So I see the allure, but everyone knows how I feel about Quiddy. And then the trade I want to make sure we cover before we get to the next pick here. Cowboys moving down 2 picks, 124 to 126, and in the process upgrading the 433 and the 434 to the 332 and the 333. So 2 picks gets him 2 1-round bumps from fourth to third. So, hey, when it's that easy thing to do. And then the Commanders step up here and take Jihad Campbell as a second defender off the board. There's some question of whether he stays at linebacker or moves to edge in this game. Right now, it looks like he's going to be kept as linebacker, which, again, is probably the position that Commanders hopes he'll be. Definitely some concern, as we mentioned earlier, about injury risk and recovery from injury that needs to be counted in. So he may not be available immediately, but in terms of who the best linebacking prospect was in this draft, with the exception of one other guy, I think it was 80 to 90% consensus it was Jihad. So now it's a question of, can he clear the things he needs to clear so that he can start doing what he needs to do to live up to that name? Excellent.
Yes.
So, okay. So, I mean, pick's fine. I don't know if it's the defender that I go with. He's the second one off the board. But he's in that group of players that are deserving of it. This is, out of any of them, this is the player that you're definitely going to have to wait the longest on.
Yeah, it was between him and one other guy who I won't name right now. But for me, he tore his labrum. He already had surgery on it. They're expecting him to be ready by tentatively training camp. People were talking about his knee, unless I've heard anything or I'm missing something. He had his knee scoped back in 23 and then had a super productive year in 24. So I don't see that as an issue. But that's just my 2 cents. And if you look at my linebacking group, I've got some guys that are probably going to age out or be pushed out of their positions probably over the next year or 2. So I was kind of trying to prepare for that instead of trying to work, a $20-30 million linebacker into a trade somewhere, which is the prices on them, they're just skyrocketing. So
Yeah.
trying to get ahead of the game there and get the guy that was probably the hot commodity on my draft list as far as linebackers go.
Yeah, and more time with Howie, more time with that defense, more time, not Howie, but more time with the Eagles, basically, more time with that defense. It's only going to make him better. So I think it's a good stash pick for you, playing a year ahead. That's definitely one that should appreciate in value.
Yeah, and I paid what? I moved back a couple rounds in my late thirds, because prior to this I had looked at the Bills roster and the Cowboys roster and saw a hole at linebacker and really didn't want him to come off the board right before I got up, so I paid up a little bit.
Yep. Well, you got the guy you wanted. So then the last pick that's been made so far, and I'd say I can't believe, but I can. And I'll be honest, I think it's because he's trolling and he wants to have the podcast end before he makes the pick because, you guys are trying to go for the end of the first round, but you don't get to do it because I haven't picked, is exactly the kind of thing I feel Cowboys would do. So it's a busy day. It's why you wanted to move back more than 2 picks, but yet I'm sure offers have come to move back, and he's not moving back or moving out or any of the things that he said he wanted to do. So, anyways, the Bills, I feel like this is another reach. This is definitely a place I would take a defender over the pick, but picks Jalen Noel. Look, pre-draft, same boat as Warren. Noel and Warren were darlings of the scouting community before the draft happened. And the draft happened, and landing spot, draft capital, etc., type of things moved back the perception and value of those 2 players. But whether it just hasn't been updated or Eric hadn't consumed that information or whatever, that's just kind of how at least I feel about Jalen Noel. I think he makes a lot of sense on that team, and I think a lot has to do as to what the long-term plan is for Tank Dell. He obviously needs this year to get healthy, but after completely destroying his knee, is there a plan or world where he returns to the football field, and when is that?
No. Seems unlikely to me.
Yeah. So we shall see. But that's the end of the draft so far. Look, I mean, 25 picks ain't bad after a couple of days. We are stuck here because of Cowboys being ridiculous, and that is what it is. But we have, just looking ahead real quick here, we have Cowboys at 126, we have Chiefs, we have Patriots at 127, Chiefs at 128, Bears at 129, Pats at 130, Bills at 131, and then the Dolphins double tap at 132 and 201. So in the next couple picks, we have Pats, I think 3 times. We have Dolphins twice. We have Bills once. We have Bears twice. There's an opportunity to go on a nice little run over the next, call it 18 hours here, if folks just commit to kind of paying attention to things. But I think that's part of why this year's draft is feeling so long, is because we haven't had timers and it's taking place early. The level of attention to it may not be quite there. But any other thoughts about the first 25 picks of the draft so far?
Yeah, it's been a good draft. It's been exciting. I've enjoyed it.
You know you have, you bastard. I'm sorry. I'm still a little bit bitter.
Well, then we might have to work out a deal.
I'm sure we'll discuss something, but I think both of us are quite happy with the way that turned out. So, nonetheless, that doesn't mean I'm not going to get a few cheap shots in there.
Of course.
This is the way. Colts, Commanders, anything else you guys want to add to before we close things down for now?
No, just hurry the hell up.
Yeah, I mean, and look, if I had any kind of confidence that Cowboys was actually going to move this along, I would probably leave the stream open. I'd probably have us keep going, but I don't.
Hey, only 2.5 hours to go, and he has to pick.
2.5 hours and he's forced to pick. Yeah.
We can find something to talk about.
The
for 2.5
timer
hours.
goes off. Timer
Well,
turns
will-
off like 20 minutes after. So.
I sent him an offer. We'll see if he's interested.
Oh, I've
If
sent
not-
like 4 offers to him. He's declined all of them. So
Oh, of course. It is. Well, if not, we're gonna continue this for 2.5 hours. So cooking lessons. Is that what we're going there?
So if we've learned anything from the Lions draft so far, this is the time of the day when the secrets come out. It's like that scene in Happy Gilmore. Like, you want to learn the secrets of the pros? Meet us by the 9th green at 9:00.
Keep trade cut updates come out. All the dynasty rankings update for the day.
I've sent a lot of offers trying to move up into this draft a little bit.
I've
And,
sent a
man,
ton. For the 2 that I actually got completed, I probably sent close to 50.
I mean,
50
it's surprising how resistant people are. It's like, all right.
Well, again, I think some people have longer memories on some of these things.
Mhm. Well, I'm
Holy
thinking
shit! After much
it happened?
shaming,
There it is.
happened. There is all right, and now we can
26th
keep it
the
going.
26th pick of our draft, the Cowboys select Michael Williams, defensive end of San Francisco.
That's
This
what I'm
is
hoping
one of the
about.
defenders I've been talking about since
Yes.
114. You should be
Yes.
trading up for.
This is
That's
the
why I
guy
said
that was either
inside the
Jihad
14.
Campbell or Michael Williams. And I went with Jihad.
Yeah, because honestly, it's like, who's really gonna be starting over him?
Oh no, he's got a clear-cut path. And
Like,
he's-
I don't think there's anyone in. I don't know if they were expecting to sign Joey Bosa or what, but I don't think they have anyone in the starting role opposite
So
Joey Bosa.
there is a sliver of hope left that Drake Jackson will pull his shit together.
I
That
think you're
is
the only one
Quickly
living with that
dying
story, Mike.
hope.
That is a flicker of a candle in a fucking.
I'm looking right
light
now. Do you
form
have
that
him
he can
rostered,
go in.
Mike? Yes, you do.
Of course
Okay.
he does.
Yep.
Of course he does. Come on. I'll give you a 6th rounder for him.
Yeah, no, I'll hold on to Drake until the 49ers cut him, but that's just how much of a homer I am on him.
Yeah.
And I
At
get
this
that.
point, there's really one defender, at least in my book, that I've got as like a 1st-round talent. He is listening to the pod. Yes, the shame. Outside of that, like, we're starting to get into the territory of, do you throw a dart on a guy that's very raw with high draft capital invested that may or may not develop? Or do you throw a dart on an offensive player you really like that had weak draft capital? So I would not be shocked to start seeing trades out. Like Patriots especially, he's got 27, 30, 204, 210, 213. Wouldn't be shocked if he starts either moving all of the later 2s into like the very top of the 2nd, early or late 1st, or just out of the draft. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I think Mikael Williams was one of the last clear cut, like, this guy's a stud.
Yeah, I think he is, again, a no doubter. I think there's one or two others that obviously meet that definition from a defensive side of the ball. I think there's a couple of other offensive players I'd want to take a shot on here. but I think we're right near the end of the first round where, look, the reaching could continue and these things fall to the early second. But I think we see a different type of defender that starts coming out onto the board in the 203, 204 range of the draft.
Yeah. Like cornerback.
Well, I mean, that's where all the blue chips are: defensive tackle,
True.
corner,
Defensive tackle, corner, and safety. That's what's left. But I mean, I don't think you can find anyone that's going to like really.
Oh,
There's-
the kicker that was picked up by Baltimore.
I mean, there's, I'd say, two guys in that blue chip range of positions that would normally not be drafted high that I could see the argument for. I'm not going to list either of their names because the Chiefs will yell at me. But I mean, outside of those two, it's like, I mean, is there enough of a difference in that player versus a player you can get in the third or the fourth to pick in the second? I don't. So.
Oh, if you take one of those positions in the second, you're going to get shamed, regardless of how good that pick ends up. Like, we will shame you.
You're talking DT, safety, and corner, or just like DB?
Nope, all three of them. That's good.
No, I encourage people to draft those.
I
Those
think
guys down the
that
board for me.
there's a time and a place for a defensive tackle in the second, because as much as people hate to admit it, having a 230-point defensive tackle is a gigantic advantage for a contending team.
Well, I mean, look, I think that there is a point in the second round, very similar to what we were talking about in the first, that your top defenders start making a lot more sense at a certain point in the second round, in the first round, versus, not to pick on Bills again, but Jalen Noel. Like, I think the third or fourth option on a late day 2, early day 3 offensive player, I go defense breaks ties on those. At some point in the second round, we're going to hit that point with defense where we're firmly into late day 2, potentially into day 3, looking at some of these defenders saying, do we not like, or how much do we like on some of these guys? And it's just not going to be there. And, we would break ties towards a defensive tackle or a corner over some of those guys. I think kind of rule of thumb, the earliest I really consider a corner is third round. Kind of same idea for the safety, but I bet we start seeing some of these top safeties that we've been referring to start going in the mid-second.
Mark my words, there will be at least one safety and probably 5 defensive tackles in the second.
I wouldn't bet against that. I mean, because frankly, that is a strength of this class.
Yes.
When I was watching the combine, one of the things I noted was how deep the defensive line was in this class, and there's also a lot of corners that impressed me in this too. So part of why I've kind of kept it bare bones is because I expect I'm going to be taking a couple of corners in this class. And I'm ready to do that. Completely fine with that. It's going to take a while to get to a point where I feel okay with that value. And, a lot of things still have to go before that happens.
Yeah. Even edge, I think the entire defensive line, like D tackle and edge. I think that you're going to see a lot of rotational edge players come out of this draft, like more than normal. Yeah, you're probably not going to have, 20 200-point edges. Like, that's extremely unrealistic. But would I be shocked at all if there was like 25 100 to 120-point edges? I don't think I would.
That number's a little high, but if you told me that there'd be like 12 guys that score somewhere between 80 and 120, like, that sounds about right.
Yeah. It's just, you've got how many total in the league? Probably 50 in the league that score 120 or more. Yeah, right around. But I mean, Daisy, what are you doing? Like Sam Hubbard, Jonah Ellis, 108, 106 point DNs. I could see a lot of DNs out of this class replacing that older guard, Jadeveon Clowney, probably getting replaced by one of the Carolina DNs. You know, I think it's going to happen all up and down the board. Like Dallas basically doesn't have any edge rushers outside of Michael Parsons. I mean, yeah, technically Chauncey Golston's on that team. It's like, oh, okay.
You don't believe
Darius Smith is sorry, what?
You don't believe in Tyrus Wheat?
I can't say that I do, but like Zadarius Smith is getting up there. Lot of guys. Cameron Jordan is somehow still in the league. I thought he had turned to dust and disappeared at this point. And then a lot of the younger guys, like Azeez Ojulari, would not be shocked if he gets pushed out by some younger, later round DN. Anyways, that's kind of my rant on it. I love this class of edges. A lot of players are going to play well. How many were actually drafted? Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20. So there's 21 picked in the first 4 rounds, and overall 28. Would not be shocked if over half of them were rotational quality players in the league.
All right. So let me look at my board here.
Let's start going through who's left, who's out there. What do you guys think?
No, I'm not helping anybody.
Turn off the broadcast.
Give quick, shut it off. All right. Let's do this. You know, huge fan of RJ Oben, you know, from Notre Dame. Huge fan.
Oh my god.
Does anyone even know him?
This is why we can't have nice things.
He's undrafted. He hasn't been signed to anybody. I feel like that's safe to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's see here. All these guys have gone. He's still there. Just got to update my board. Let's see.
Are you making a trade?
No. I have 4th round picks. I have future first, but that's not exactly what Pats want. So I don't think I'm going to be in the running on this one.
I'm sure everybody's opinions are different, but I wouldn't be shocked if Patriots doesn't get as many offers as, you know, maybe a couple of picks before him did, just because we're starting to get to that point where like a portion of people are just good with staying put. At least with the first round draft capital. Like we'll probably see that reinvigorated in the early second, you know, where people just get crazy amounts of offers.
Yeah, I've changed my color scheme for this. I had red as my do not draft, but I need to use red as my already drafted now for my draft board. So gotta go back through and change my color scheme this late in the game. Okay. The always efficient pink.
Yeah, that do not draft list seemed to have been a little bit larger this year than most years, at least for me.
Let's see, so he is gone. Yeah, I am.
Ugh. Yeah, I would be very surprised if the Patriots got much interest in that pick. Are you kidding me?
I mean, I would have more to say on like what people should be targeting for this type of area now that like some players are gone. But I have an offer out to Patriots, so I don't want to.
You don't want to tip your hand. Hey, you know what people should be taking is this.
I just don't want to see that. See like I'm pumping my, like an offer that I have out there already.
No, and look, I think a couple of things that people recognize about the podcast is people use the podcast to sell things. So if you think that there's no ulterior motive for folks on here, I think we do our best to try and keep it separate, but sometimes shit happens.
I just think this is the time where some of the vets on like in trade offers should be considered, because it's almost like you're probably not going to get that out of like what's available. Like there's one that's already been public knowledge, but like I got an offer of a CD for 103, and like that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. Like, yeah, that was early in the draft, so different circumstances, but that there are those kinds where you just need to go, am I even going to find anything similar to that, like with this pick?
And I think that's kind of the balance you have to strike for some of these things. Like, hey, am I going to take a guy who went on day 3 of the NFL draft and say that this is, this guy's going to hit the clear path and step up and be this year's Bucky Irving? Like,
Right.
I hate using that analogy because it's such lazy analysis of, hey, who's a third round back who kind of came out of nowhere and really, scored 200 points and set things on fire? Like, that's Bucky Irving. That's obviously what everyone is hoping their third round or their day 3 running back turns into. Like, no shit.
Mhm.
You hope you drafted the next Bucky Irving. Like, I hope I drafted the next Lawrence Taylor at 7. Like, no shit. But, just using that same archetype over and over again just kind of is lazy analysis, I feel like. But
Right.
I fall into that trap too.
Well, I mean, I hope everybody that has made their picks so far that have players with that type of draft capital, that they're optimistic and like what they've picked. But for the ones that haven't picked, not all of them are going to turn into a Bucky Irving. And I know Colts had used Alvin Kamara as an example earlier in the podcast, but this is the range where if somebody like that, if a team like that comes to you and offers you a player like that, like, I don't think there's an offensive player that is going to score Alvin Kamara points, maybe even in their peak.
Well, you never know, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm just using that as an example.
Bye.
It is 11:23. Here's hoping that Bucks is not turning in for the night.
Why is that? Did Patriots pick without me noticing?
What's that?
Why the Buck? Okay, Liam. Why the
Yeah,
Buccaneers?
It's Patriots, not Bucks.
Yeah.
Man, you must be
Packers on the
tired.
clock. Yeah, Buccaneers, I think, originally had the 127. So I think that, or 126. So that's where you're seeing that from.
Yeah.
But
Bye.
passes on the clock and may have settled into the fact that the Cowboys hadn't picked and probably wasn't going to. So
If it was 11, I'd probably be making that call as well.
Well, I mean,
Bye.
who knows? But I have a feeling that he's packed it in, so we're probably not going to get any more picks tonight,
Bye.
unfortunately.
Well, like someone said earlier, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Person's very wise,
Yes, very, very wise.
brilliant, some might say, but
The trades are of the finest quality.
some have said that, and
So,
some roll their eyes. But anyway, so we will put the pin in it at the 126. We'll pick up at the 127
Bye.
probably on Wednesday. I'm optimistic that we're going to hit a stretch here where we make some good progress and maybe be through round 2 and into round 3. If not, we may have to wait till next week. But I think we're getting to that point in the draft where everyone's going to stop waiting for,
Bye.
best case scenario here. So, any final thoughts before we shut it down? I think this was 2 hours and 45 minutes well spent. I'll let Commanders back in as we try and close it down for part 1 here. Any final thoughts?
I'm gonna sell my stuff. I have my rookies on my trade bait because I've been bullied into it. So send offers.
You convince yourself you want CD instead?
No. It was actually the wide receiver, the other one that I've gotten enough offers that I'm like, all right, I guess we'll entertain some.
Bye.
To everyone listening that we just shit on your picks for like 2.5 hours,
Bye.
don't be discouraged. We're all idiots too.
Good.
I was gonna say I make poor choices too. Feel free
Yep.
to shoot me some offers.
We all make phenomenal. Just look at the Panthers. Never made a bad draft decision. Right?
Never at all. Isaiah Spiller
Doesn't exist. Never heard of him before.
Yeah, I never traded most of my team to get Trey Lance.
Yeah, exactly.
I do appreciate the multiverse exists someplace where Isaiah Spiller is a god in fantasy. And we're all fools for doubting him.
I never drafted Dwayne Haskins at 102. So
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. So here's to some more good draft decisions, and we'll talk to you guys later in the week.